Hello everyone, Macintosh here. Today's video will be diving into the lore behind the weapons used by the war clones. This will be covering a wide range of weapons, from the ones seen in Dust 514 to what we see in Eve Vanguard today. Before I move on, I want to give Thaddeus Reynolds a big thank you for helping me get an idea on how these weapons might actually work and how they came about. He's the one that did the theory crafting. I've also utilized official lore reference material to supplement the topic. Please keep in mind that CCP Games makes no claim whatsoever that any of what you are about to hear is grounded in official lore. But of course, CCP made no effort to give us detailed lore on the weapons anyways, so the community is kind of having to improvise here. Another thing to keep in mind is this is not an exhaustive list. There are several more weapons that are not covered here in this video, along with their related variants. Examples being the Black Eagle assault rifle, the mass driver, the forge gun, the HMG, the shotgun, the flux grenade, and remote explosives. Otherwise, this video will be too long. We will look into how the weapons actually worked in Dust 514, the type of damage they dealt, the type of ammunition fired, the EVE Online NPC corporations that are known to have manufactured them, and the empires that exploited them. Chief among the reasons I made this video is that I believe the NPC corporations of New Eden should have a little more of a spotlight. Anyone who has played Dust 514 likely remembers who manufactured their weapon of choice in the game. However, it is not likely they know or understand the story of how those manufacturers arrived at the final designs and why they were involved in the first place. This is also a good way to introduce you to a sample of the power dynamics between competing corporations and empires, and what demands or needs they were trying to fill that will help their respective empires or themselves reach their intended goals. Let's start off with a Nova Knife, a simple sidearm that originally began as a default melee attack in the open beta of Dust's development before becoming its own separate weapon in later updates to the game. It's a charge-based weapon with two modes, basic cutting and a charged cut. Originally developed by the Ishikone Mega Corporation, it began as a mundane cutting tool for repair station personnel who needed something to cut through heavy armor and hull plating during emergency situations and during salvage operations, whether in open space or docked somewhere. It uses hot plasma that is magnetically contained along the edges of the blade. The primary function of the plasma is to weaken the target material by directly heating up the surface it touches. Then, the actual cutting blade that is behind the plasma pushes through the material that has been softened for it. The tool proved very efficient at cutting hundreds of times before the plasma ran out, due to the way the plasma is recycled back into the tool before it had a chance to dissipate into the immediate environment. Of course, such a really cool cutting tool turned out to be equally effective at close quarter combat. It is very likely the early adopters were special forces units operating under Ishikone Watch, the security arm of the Ishikone Corporation. Due to the ability to cut through heavy armor plating for salvage operations, these will be very useful at breaching through security barriers for VIP rescue operations executed by Ishikone Watch. It did not take long for Ishikone to realize they were wasting its potential on backbreaking work like repairs or salvage, when it could be better utilized for combat. Although, one could argue that it had less to do with combat applications and more to do with the marketing department saying, hey, we can sell a bunch of these things to the war clones fighting on the planets below. Let's not forget that Ishikone, like literally any other corporation throughout New Eden, is out to make a profit. For all intents and purposes, Ishikone is an arms dealer, just backed by the Caldari state. As to what Ishikone was trying to accomplish by introducing this weapon to the mass market besides obvious profit, it can be speculated that the Nova Knives were not really trying to look for a role to fill in combat. The knife started out as a simple cutting tool used in salvage operations. It just so happens to have proven to be more useful as a killing tool by curious observers. As a side note, Ishikone was the megacorporation that initiated contact and negotiations with the once existing Jove Directorate, which led to the introduction of the capsule technology. The Nova knife just happened to grow naturally out of its niche, regardless of what negotiations were going on behind closed doors. Moving up from the Nova knives, we got the one sidearm that perpetually pissed off people. Introducing the Flaylock pistol. This weapon was developed by Core Complexion Incorporated, and it ended up becoming very useful for the Mimitar Republic, specifically when the Republic Liberation Marine Corps was facing the threat posed by the Templar, which were deployed by the Amarr Empire against the Mimitar at the time. The Flaylock pistol functioned by firing a 25.4mm by 116mm cartridge that was a combination rocket packed with explosives. These rounds used a built-in chemical propellant to accelerate it down the barrel before a rocket motor kicks in to take over. High-explosive anti-tank warheads were often used to deal with light-armored foes. Because the cartridges did not use explosives like gunpowder to accelerate, the recoil was minimal. Due to their size and weight, though, the effective distance is comparable to that of a thrown grenade. This did not replace grenades since they still packed more energy than the Flaylock cartridges. But the Flaylock pistol sure caused a lot of headaches to the enemy when all the user had to do was shoot at the ground near the foe, since the blast radius was not enough to affect the user who fired it unless it was out of stupidity. Core Complexion Incorporated is regarded by the Mimitar Republic as a great success story of Mimitar business. Their primary focus is to come up with innovative designs combined with cost-effective production methods. This approach led the corporation to becoming successful on a universal scale, a rarity for the Republic looking to make its mark on New Eden. And that innovation led to the creation of the Flaylock pistol and ultimately the weapon gaining a cult following. Aegis, a division of Concord, no, not the game, later commissioned a variation of the Flaylock called a bolt rifle. It was made to utilize a smaller cartridge of 17.3mm by 116mm with the same operating principle, but instead used a gravimetric detonation sensor instead of a contact fuse. However, there was an issue with the naming of the weapon, which got Aegis involved in a legal dispute with Calakiota, another Caldari megacorporation similar to Ishikone. It was not made clear how that case was settled or ruled between the two. Speaking of Calakiota, that brings me to the next weapon to talk about, the rail rifle. The rail rifle, as its name implies, uses energy that is temporarily stored inside its capacitors to charge up the rail so that a round can be accelerated to lethal velocities. Calakiota developed this weapon with a proprietary technology known as microscale capacitors. This was key to its ability to fire rapidly in a sustained manner, as most railguns that fired rapidly for too long would suffer from oversaturation of its capacitors. This was caused by the fluctuating heat which affected the resistance along the rails. While relatively expensive compared to its counterparts, the rail rifle is able to engage targets from mid to long range with sustained fire. Armored types that were popular in the market were reduced to just being suggestions as the weapon turned those into Swiss cheese. Instead of cycling the capacitors from fully charged to fully discharged with every shot, the weapon dumps all of that energy in one go while sending round after round down the rail until either the magazine is empty or until the capacitors are fully discharged. So instead of cycling the capacitors 30 times to fire 30 shots, it was able to fire multiple shots with a single cycle. You just needed to hold the trigger to get the capacitors fully charged to get it started. This reduced the frequency of having to maintain the rifle, and it utilized helical rails for further stability of the rounds as they fired. However, there was an additional issue unrelated to the rail technology at the time: the magazine capacity. This meant the weapon was relegated to just mainly being a planet-side weapons platform. However, it was a popular weapons platform among Dust war clones because of its range and stopping power. A licensed variant of the rail rifle, developed by Ishikone, featured a higher rate of fire. With the Caldari megacorporations being naturally competitive, this annoyed Calakiota and its small arms division. Years later, not to be outdone by their competitors, Calichiota came up with the KLN-6 compact railgun. The KLN-6 uses a core compensator to send pulses of power to the railgun. However, limiters had to be installed to prevent the core compensator from causing oversaturation because it was originally designed to work on rail weapons much larger than the KLN-6. But the most notable feature is its ability to 3D print ammunition on demand. Using compressed liquids of different base materials, the kinetic rounds are created inside the KLN-6 via a printing chamber. This results in three main advantages. The mass, density, and shape of the round can be adjusted to suit the immediate environment or situation. The capacity of the magazine is increased significantly, and the logistics needed to bring in more supplies becomes simplified. This could enable the KLN-6 railgun to operate in environments outside of planetary engagements and into space-based situations, such as Code Blue, armed incursion of the ship. Looking at the history of Calichiota, it is the largest of the Caldari megacorporations, rivaled only by the Suku Vesta Corporation. It has a strong presence in practically every industry, from manufacturing and distribution to research and even entertainment. The most notable part of its history is with its subsidiary, Echelon Entertainment, which caters to the upper class of Caldari society and used to push traditional Caldari values that focus on patriotism to the state and remembering the sacrifices of those who fought in the Gallente Caldari War 2 centuries ago. Moving on to the Gallente side of the competition, Duvolle Laboratories developed the G75 VLB, which saw popular use in combat in the Dust Era. It laid the foundation for the modern-day plasma assault rifle for the Gallente Federation, as it addressed several problems faced by blaster-based small arms inside an atmosphere. Using a combination of plasma, magnetic field stabilizers, and a cyclotron particle accelerator, the G75 VLB addressed all of the problems associated with blaster-based weaponry in the atmosphere, such as dispersion of the magnetic charge, accuracy, range, sustained fire, and magazine capacity. The cyclotron particle accelerator would first excite the plasma into a high-energy state before being launched down the barrel using magnetic field stabilizers as soon as the high-energy state reached deadly levels. The magnetic field stabilizer also manipulated the shape of the plasma bolt, so that not only did it hold its bolt-like shape for far longer distances, but it also allowed it to collapse the plasma bolt in one specific direction, forward. Effectively, it's like firing a volley of shaped charges. However, there remained one major issue with the G75 despite its improvements: significant heat generation. It generated so much heat that anyone within close proximity of the weapon being fired, even the user, would get cooked. But that didn't seem to stop the war clones. Immortal soldiers wearing drop suits with highly advanced armor and shielding, coupled with suicidal tendencies and a god complex, the G75 was perfect for them. Eventually, even that problem got resolved. It turned out that installing an expendable heat sink at the magazine helped draw and dissipate the excess heat efficiently and safely. This allowed even unprotected users to finally wield a plasma rifle without becoming medium rare by accident. Since then, Duvolle Laboratories has been rather busy researching and developing a modernized version of the G75, a weapon that is anticipated to be fit for the Vanguard. Publicly known as the GK-15, it utilizes a next-generation cyclotron and fusion system for plasma storage and is more efficient than the G75 VLB. But that's about all we know about the weapon, as it still hasn't hit the open market yet. Duvolle Laboratories, named after two sisters, one a nanomolecular engineer and the other a business graduate, is the leader in biotech and starship drive technologies within the Gallente Federation and employs a workforce of more than 30 million. Since its founding, it grew rapidly and established itself within the Gallente Federation's military-industrial complex. Duvolle was also very aggressive in its acquisitions, which included Crumeos Incorporated, after Chemeltech sold it for a generous amount offered by Duvolle. Chromeos was not doing too well before the acquisition, but afterwards became an autonomous entity under new management. I previously covered Chromeos Incorporated during one of my EVE lore videos on the cloning technology. It was later leaked in the year YC-111 that Duvolle's personal weapons division and Chromeos were working together in what probably would be described as the last soldier anyone would ever need. Something tells me this has something to do with the Dust 514 mercenaries, but I digress. The Gallente Federation, of course, did not stop at just plasma assault rifles for the war clones. Developed by Allotek Industries, the plasma cannon was primarily designed for combat in confined spaces and urban operations, although it saw use as a troll weapon much like the Flaylock pistol. It uses a dense plasma discharge that is highly unstable and decays rapidly, thus having limited range like the Flaylock pistol. As the plasma discharge decays at a distance, it releases heat and energy to cause severe damage to anything caught within its critical emission radius. This is accomplished using ultra-cold plasma that is prepared and then heated inside a magneto-core trap as part of a pre-fire charge. Just before it gets discharged, a small precursor projectile is fired that produces a short-lived tail that helps guide and contain the unstable discharge towards its target. The projectile is actually consumed in the process. Estimated range of the plasma cannon is predicted to be about 50 meters, and its maximum capacity is 2 shots. Infantry can easily be killed in 1 shot anyways, and it only takes 2 shots for standard armored heavy vehicles. Again, this is primarily made for confined quarters combat. I predict the plasma cannon will be very useful in room clearing if it ever sees combat again in Vanguard. This could primarily be used in station-based combat where you want to clear a room or confined area of enemy combatants without accidentally blowing a hole on the side of the station in outer space. Interestingly, researching Allotek Industries led me to a deep rabbit hole behind the corporation. Allotek Industries is an offshoot of Roden Shipyards, founded to develop and manufacture top-quality ship modules. Not much else is known about Allotek. Roden Shipyards, on the other hand, is the biggest producer of Tech 2 ships for the Gallente Federation. It is owned by Jacques Roden, who served 2 terms as president of the Gallente Federation from the year YC-112 until YC-122. Known for strong-arming his opponents, he brought the entire Gallente military-industrial complex together against Executive Order 81042, an action that led to his election and the resignation of his political opponent, Soru Furitain. Not sure I pronounced that correctly. The significance of the executive order was that it mandated the mobilization of all Gallente manufacturing corporations for the war against the Caldari state. Jacques used the order to align the entire military-industrial complex against the then-sitting president, Soru Furitain. The order read as follows: Executive Order 81042, Consolidation of National Armament Assets, YC 111, August 12th. The involvement of federal government employees as contributing representatives in the national arms industry has been deemed essential to achieving the objectives mandated by military leadership. It is in the interests of the nation at large that the best minds of the field act as one, and that private institutions shall find their favor in serving public interest. By the authority vested in me as president of the Federated Union of Gallente Prime, and in order to establish a Council of Armaments Advisors working under Federation auspices, it is hereby ordered. Section 1. The Federal Council of Armaments Advisors. A. Membership. There is established the Federal Council of Armaments Advisors, Council. The Council shall comprise the following members appointed by the President. Redacted. Finally, we come to the Amarr weaponry. Instruments of divine judgment built to show heathens the laser-focused light. 2 of the most popular are the scrambler rifle and the laser rifle. These will be the last 2 we will talk about in this video. Starting with the scrambler rifle, it was a collaboration between Cartham Conglomerate and Visium, based on its smaller brother, the scrambler pistol. It solved many problems faced by laser weapons when used within the atmosphere. Amarrians typically use focusing crystals to direct full energy down the barrel to cause damage when it comes to space-based combat. But in the case of the scrambler rifle, not all of the laser energy is used to deal damage. It also ionizes the air it cuts through, creating a plasma channel through which a bolt of electricity is shot through. This combination of laser and electrical energy shot together results in a deadly combo capable of penetrating most armor systems. One of the unique features of the scrambler rifle, which saw extensive use in Dust 514, is its dual firing modes. The rifle can fire pulses of energy in rapid succession by simply pulling the trigger as fast as possible. But if you hold the trigger, it builds up the energy for a single powerful shot that can rip through shields and armor. The problem though is you can't hold the charge forever, as it will place excess stress on the focusing crystal and saturating the heat sinks faster. So that energy has to be released somehow. So you will either have to fire the shot or suffer from one of two things. 1. Having excess heat dumped onto you. This is not too much of a problem for a war clone wearing special armor. To anyone else though, this is fatal. Or 2. Risk fracturing the focusing crystal, turning the weapon into a very expensive fragmentary bomb. Not something even an armored war clone would ever want to experience. As the scrambler rifle gained more steam and saw heavy use in combat, more research and development was poured into the weapon for further refinement. Khanid Innovations recently came into the picture with the introduction of the Vulcan PR-6. Chief among its many features for the future battlefield, it uses gravitational lenses meant to replace the crystals, thus removing the risk of fragmentation in case of overheating. Unfortunately, we have yet to see the weapon in action, so no one really knows how it handles. This did not stop speculators from making flintlock jokes about it due to its appearance, just as God intended. Finally, we move on to the laser rifle. Also developed by Visium, it uses 3 individual beams converged onto a single point for a coherent output. This configuration results in a more stable beam with longer ranges. A unique feature of the Visium laser rifle is that its beam actually starts off weak and then builds up damage the longer its trigger is held. This is because it takes a little while for the laser to stabilize as it reaches optimal temperatures, and its laser coherence further improves. However, this configuration required some fail-safes to be implemented. The weapon forcibly shuts down to flush heat from its internal components once a certain temperature threshold is reached. However, the Amarr Templars, the first war clones of New Eden, often ran these weapons with practically no fail-safes in mind. It was pointless to have them anyways, when the user is an immortal clone soldier surrounded by shielding and armor. Another issue faced by the laser rifle was its heavy design. These two weapons, the scrambler rifle and laser rifle, eventually landed 2 unique roles. The scrambler rifle as a standard service rifle for the Amarr infantry, and the laser rifle as a support weapon for the more specialized soldier. Cartham Conglomerate is an industrial corporation within the Amarr Empire, with the Caldari Lydai megacorporation owning a sizable share in the company. It brought much needed vitality into the field of research and development. Cartham also provided support for Visium, which later rose to prominence within the Amarr industrial sector. As for Khanid Industries, they are among many of the corporations within the Khanid Kingdom, one of the ancient true Amarr royal houses of the Amarr Empire. Having established a partnership with the Ishiko megacorporation of the Caldari State, the Khanid used this opportunity to help stabilize the Caldari State's economy, as it was found to be economically beneficial to the Empire to have a strong economic partner, especially at a time when the Galente Federation and the Minmatar Republic were building close economic relations of their own. This was around the time of the Empyrean Age. There is a lot of history with the royal house of Khanid. They have a deeply embedded warrior culture dating back to even before the Amarr homeworld had a name change. Amarr Prime was once known as Athra. This warrior culture meant the Khanid were at the forefront of the subjugation of the Minmatar during the Second Reclamation. However, we can't ignore the internal strife within the Amarr Empire that later resulted in the Khanid Kingdom's unique emblem. If you happen to notice, it's upside down, but that's a story for another video. That is it though. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and as usual, fly safe.